Good evening and welcome to a very special session. I am with an old friend. This is a first time to JLF. I feel like a war veteran, and certainly coming through the crowds, it was like a battleground outside. So it's always a pleasure to be talking to you. I enjoyed reading your book. I've been reading your columns for a long time. So let's start right away with, you talk about the comfort zone. Now, sometimes it's important to get out of the comfort zone. So what is this comfort zone and how does one get out of this comfort zone?
Thank you so much, Shobha. And thank you all of you for coming here to this session and sparing the time to come and be part of the launch of this book. This is my third collection of my columns, which appears in the Times of India every Sunday, Ozone. The column is about contemporary living and relationships, and I'm very grateful to Shobha for agreeing to launch this book for me, and it's a very, very special moment for me. She gave me a blurb for my first book and regularly talks to me about my columns and writing, so thank you so much, Shobha. Comfort zone, of course, is what we are all very comfortable with. You come into this world, you have certain milestones to cover. You study, you grow up, you get married, you have children, and you grow old and you die. And that also is a life that you've lived. But a life well lived is when you go beyond those comfort zones and you try to challenge yourself, you try to understand yourself, and you try to do a little bit more than what you would ordinarily do in just the course of your life. So like one of the columns in this book is, are you an extraordinary person? And I think if we were to ask people that, most people would say, yes, I think I'm extraordinary. Very few people would be modest enough to think that, no, I'm an ordinary person. But I think the really extraordinary people are the ones who probably will be able to say, yes, I'm an ordinary person, I have nothing extraordinary. So I believe that to be extraordinary, you just live your ordinary life in the way you do, but there are certain decisions, certain things that you do differently. So extraordinary things may not happen to an extraordinary person, but he will deal with ordinary things in an extraordinary manner. So that, I think, is going beyond your comfort zone.
You call your column Ozone, one of the columns. What does the O stand for, apart from the obvious? You've made it clear it doesn't stand for what most of us with dirty minds think it stands for. So what does it stand for?
Well, when I started writing the column, and I must confess that I named the column even before I knew what it is going to be. I just started writing the column, and this is almost 10 years ago. At that point, I thought of a lot of names, and it was the O-zone, O-zone, and what you are alluding to was partly on my mind, I must confess. So it is, today, which is why I leave it open to interpretation. A lot of people ask me, why do you call it ozone? And I say that, yes, it is partly, it relates to ozone, the protective layer that protects us from the harmful ultraviolet rays of the sun. So in a way, it is, a kind of a protection where you are, where I'm talking a lot about everyday life, contemporary living, about relationships and how to make the most of them without, and not get injured in the process. But apart from that, yes, there is that naughty element too.
Good. Naughty is always good. You also ran a column called Mars and Venus, where you discussed man-woman relationships. Do you find that in today's times, those are more complex? Are our young people struggling to find an equation which works? Or, as most people of a certain age will say, it was much easier in our times. Life was simpler. Women were women, men were men. So Mars and Venus sort of coexisted very compatibly. Now, what is your experience, since your column does deal a lot with relationships, how to negotiate today's tough terrain, emotional landscapes changing all the time?
Shobha, relationships were easier earlier because life was also easier. We didn't have so many options. So like I said, you just did the things that everybody else did. You came back from office, you put up your feet, you maybe watched a bit of TV, spent time with family, and that was about it. And today you have so many options, you deal with so many people, women have stepped out into the world, men interact with a lot more women and vice versa. and you are constantly engaged and connected with the rest of the world, whether you are at home or in office or outside. You deal with so many more people, so relationships are more complex, interactions are more complex, and that's because life is more complex today. So you deal with multiple issues at the same time, and you try to do that. But the one big change that I find is that if life earlier, was the basic elements that you needed were food and shelter, today I think the basic things that you need in life are food, shelter, comfort. You look for comfort all the time. You need love. And you need self-actualization. I find a lot of people, whether they are looking for love or not, most youngsters are looking for self-actualization. Everybody wants to explore themselves, figure out what is this life about, what am I doing in this world, and am I really honest, am I good? Am I really in love? That's a question that most women and men ask themselves, which makes it so complicated. So you fall in love, you're in love. But today you ask yourself, am I really in love? Is this the one? Can I find a better person? Maybe I'm not making the right decision. So it's all those questions which on the one hand help us understand ourselves better, but they end up complicating relationships.
Do you get a lot of direct questions coming to you about matters like this? Am I really in love? How do I know I'm in love? Do people approach you on the street or over email and seek your advice like an agony aunt? Has that happened?
Only my office colleagues, they do a lot of that. And some of my close friends, but generally the response that I receive on emails to my column is more specific to the column that particular week. And I find that instead of asking something, a lot of readers like to share their own experiences. So they talk more about what you wrote resonates with me because I went through the same thing. And then they'll write their story and talk about it. So no, they don't normally approach me like an agony aunt.
How does your family respond to these columns? Some of them which are very personal and not in terms of content that it happened to me, but clearly there are parallels that people inevitably draw. So what is your family structure like and how do they respond to your columns?
This is a question that nobody has ever asked me, and I don't know why, but trust Shobha to ask. Yes, a lot of the time, the friend that I'm talking about in my columns is actually me, as you would know very well. And sometimes you need to mask the person or the experience, not because I want to mask it, not because I'm hiding it, but because of certain sensitivities in the family or at home. So I'm married to a bureaucrat, and he's very understanding, very encouraging, and but still, he has colleagues, he has friends and other people, and his family and my family. So a lot of the time you have to mask that, a lot of instances that you talk about.
Has your husband, who's a bureaucrat, ever told you what is not to be written?
Never. He's never done it, and he knows he cannot do it. So maybe he's never done it because he doesn't want to, or maybe it is because he knows that I wouldn't take it. I don't know how it works.
Have you lost friends because of what you've written in your columns?
Not this particular column, but yes, when I used to do a fashion column several years ago, and I used to do a party column, which was, my party column was called High Society. This is many years ago. It was in the 1990s. I started a party column, and I used to do fashion writing. I used to critique the fashion shows. Yes, that time I lost friends because when you are critiquing a show, you are writing about, if you don't like it, you don't like the clothes that you see, then they wouldn't be able to take it well. Although I must say that some of them were very sporting, and they would say, okay, this time you didn't like my clothes, wait, JJ Valaya being one of them, saying, watch my show next time. I'm going to show it to you. Yes.
That's the right spirit. So, since you're saying that most of the time you prefer to mask your own realities because you're sensitive to the people in your life and maybe your husband's colleagues, I take it you will not write a memoir.
Well, there's nothing as exciting in my life as to write a memoir about, seriously. And I can't imagine anybody even wanting to read about my personal life. I haven't thought about it at all.
You're ducking. But that's all right. Have you thought of fiction where you can also mask and write?
Yes, I have. I keep thinking about writing fiction all the time, but frankly, it's not happening to me. I sit down to write, I start many stories, I've started many novels, but I've not been able to carry on. So I did the next best thing and I started this project, Write India. As you know, you are a Write India author with us, where I encourage other people to write fiction and short stories.
But Right India is a big move and a big, it's almost like a movement that you have initiated for the media group that you work with. A lot of young voices out there, and it's an interesting concept for those of you who may not know what Right India represents. Every year she picks 10 authors. I think this time it's 11 authors, if I'm not mistaken.
It was 11 last time?
And 10 this year. And she asks the authors to give a very small or a longish brief to young writers to respond to that and maybe construct their narratives around that brief. So the brief that I had given this year, which has just concluded, was a 4 or 5 line brief. And she also asks writers to talk about what some sort of tips that they can share as senior writers with younger aspiring authors as to how to get that narrative into place and how to make it readable. And a lot of the writers take a great amount of trouble to formulate what could be a very useful, very useful, almost like a tutorial on writing. But the young writers who respond are often very irreverent. My brief itself was very irreverent. The responses to it were very exciting. So do you want to talk about the kind of writing that you do receive, what excites you when all those entries come in? Because this year you processed more than 25,000 entries. So that's a lot of work to go through, 25,000 entries. Do you have a team that sifts through all of it?
Yes, we have a Write India team, and the best thing about Write India is a lot of people ask me, can I participate? Is there an age limit? There is no age limit. There is no limitation whatsoever. Anybody can participate. Anybody who thinks that they can be a writer and they can write, here is your chance for you. Because every month, one celebrity author gives out the passage, like Shobha said, and Shobha's passage was out last month in December. And we got a lot of entries, and Shobha, I don't think I've told you this, that your live chat on Twitter, we have a live chat with the author every month. That got us the maximum response we've ever had on a live Twitter chat for any Write India author. So that was amazing. Yeah. So we get a lot of entries. It's really shocking because when I started off Write India, the biggest fear was, what if nobody writes in? I've got 11 big authors together, and we had the most commercially successful authors, but what if we don't get a single entry? And then we decided, okay, we won't let it go that bad. What we'll do is maybe 4 or 5 entries we'll get done from here there. And we were shocked when in the very first month we got more than 2,000 entries. And in the entire year we had 25,000 short stories to deal with. We were stunned. But then we put together a team, and the team goes through it. It goes through 3 levels, and then finally comes to me and the author. And the last 10 stories and the final 3 are selected by the author with me.
And also they're published at the end of
yes,
each
the top
season.
3 stories.
Yes.
The top 3 stories of every author are published at the end of the season.
Have any of those authors actually, has it translated into contracts for them? Has it helped in real ways that someone has read their short story in the collection and offered them a book deal, for example?
Yes, there are some of our authors like Amish Tripathi, like Ravi Subramanian, like Ashwin. Some of them have already offered, book deals to these people to write with them or for them, and some are considering. And a lot of them have write back to us and tell us that I used to write short stories, but I never knew I had it in me. But because I got selected in Write India, after that I've written many more, and they brought out many books after that, and they say it's because their story got selected that they were encouraged to write the book. But like I keep telling everyone, that the moment they've participated in Write India, they are already a winner, because you've completed a short story, and how many of us can say that?
About the book, which says, are you making the most of life? She asks a lot of pertinent questions, but questions which don't have very easy answers. So it makes you think, it makes you introspect. And you talk about chaos and how most of us don't really know how to respond to chaos. So do you want to talk a little about that? Because your column on that was particularly perceptive.
Yes. You said there are no easy questions, no easy answers to these questions. I never even try to answer the questions really, and I leave it open to the readers. I throw up a lot of questions. Most of them are the ones that go through our mind all the time, and most of these columns start off with me trying to process my life and the questions that come in my mind. So it's that thinking process that gets translated into these columns. And the way I deal with chaos is I just become absolutely still. I become what you call sthir, absolutely. And then I just allow it all to happen around me and keep going around in circles, and so finally things kind of settle down. Because I believe it's very important to be able to be centered. So like we are all centered by the gravitational force of the earth, which doesn't allow the oceans and the trees and all of us to fly off. Similarly, I feel that our center within us, if we just focus on that and allow it to guide us to a peaceful and calm existence, and all the answers to any questions are within us and they come to us. So that's how I deal with chaos.
How do you pick the topic for each column?
In many different ways. It could be a conversation with someone. It could be, even like the other day, Facebook sends you those memories from the past. So a Facebook memory came up of a birthday party where I'm smiling and there are other people who are smiling. And I thought, oh God, I've been doing this for years, and am I still doing this? And has anything changed at all? So that gave rise to a column where I wrote about how on the face of it, nothing changes. We seem to be doing the same things, and that can be so scary, really, because you feel. Then I said, okay, but look closely into the eyes in the picture. Have my eyes changed? Have I changed? Has the tilt of my head changed? Has the confidence in the way I hold my shoulders changed? So internally, we all change a lot. And so that was how that idea came through. An idea could come through a conversation that we are having, or some book I'm reading, a movie that I'm watching. So these are picked up from everyday instances and things that happen. And it's become like funny sometimes, because anything happens when I'm at home, I'm talking to my sons or to my husband, and if I stop for a moment and I look like I'm thinking, they're like, oh God, another column comes out of this. So my sons get quoted a lot without their names being revealed, but it's like, that happens quite often, because so that's daily life. So friends, children, happens a lot.
Do you think that's an invasion of privacy, and maybe on some level your sons may mind it? Maybe friends come up to them and say, oh, I know something about you because of your mother's column that I didn't know earlier. Have they ever told you it's invasive or intrusive in their lives?
Well, I'm very careful not to let it get there. I think that is possibly what holds me back from writing fiction, that being too careful bit. Now, you brought it out twice on stage today. So I am careful. I do make them go through it, whatever I write about them. It isn't, and even about a friend, even though I may not name a friend, there's always the possibility the friend gets recognized because of certain things. So if I were to write something about you, for instance, I would always check with you before writing it.
And I'd write one right back about you, so that would be fine. We will be taking questions from the audience. So if there are questions at all or in your heads, keep them going. And we will be talking for the next 10 minutes and then be taking 3 or 4 questions. Make them questions, please, and not opinions and not speeches. Thank you very much. So this is your 3rd compilation of your columns. How have you seen yourself as a columnist changing, evolving? It will be, for most people, people who write a weekly column or even a fortnightly column, it's a huge discipline. Without that, it's simply not possible. The content is something that's always debated and questioned. Even something innocuous can always be twisted. Or has that happened to you? The predictability of it all. Are there times when you say, oh my God, I have to get up this morning and hammer this out, and I'm really not in the mood to do it, but I have to do it as a responsibility to your readers? How do you overcome all those little hiccups and hurdles?
Ozone, my column, I've gained from it as much as, or maybe more than what the column or my readers have gained from the column. I consider the writing of my column, I consider my column like a kind of a guru for me, because it disciplines me, it makes me sit down, think, not just the writing bit, but to think about it. It has this particular column, and I'm not talking about my earlier columns on fashion or page 3, that high society column which I did, which is what actually started page 3 in this country, or my fashion columns. Those didn't make that much of a difference. Those made a difference in the sense of, okay, out in society, you know, you become a kind of a mini celebrity and people are throwing parties and calling you for that. But this column, Ozone, has made a big difference to me, and it has helped me grow and evolve spiritually. So the very discipline of sitting down and writing it, the way all through the week till I get to the writing of it, my perspective changes, or I'm alert to the fact that I have to write the column. So I look at instances and I listen to people maybe with more alertness than I would, and my mind is always ticking, always trying to pick up ideas or think through. I'm curious, I ask questions, and I love to listen to people, and sometimes even just sit and overhear conversations in a cafe or something. So this column, one of the things in this is that what it has taught me is that there is people are always connected, that sometimes the thought that comes to my mind, initially I used to be scared of putting it down on paper, thinking what will people think of me, that she thinks this is how she thinks, this is what she's thinking about. And then when the column actually would come out, people would get back and say that this is exactly what I thought and how I was thinking. So there's that, it tells you that you're connected with a lot of people, that there's that deep connection between people, and your thoughts, your feelings, and you know, emotions, everything gets kind of validated, and there is you're not alone in this universe. So that's the feeling I get through my column, and that's what a lot of readers tell me that they feel as well.
You also talked about aging in this.
Aging.
Well, aging.
Yes.
So we'll if you'd like to discuss that briefly, and then we'll take the questions.
Okay. Aging. I feel sometimes some people are ageless, they never age. And some people are born old. So it's all in the attitude, and it's the way you think, it's the way you are, it's what you believe in, and I really think that what you believe comes true. Life, the trajectory that life takes is not so much about what we wish and what we want, it is more about what we believe and our intentions. I think that is what happens in life. I think some people stay forever young, and they never age at all, and like I said, it's all in the mind. The power of the mind.
So we are running out of time, and there will be really space for just 2 questions. Please make them brief. I can see 2 hands there, and if someone can hand over a mic to. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Akshay Santalia. My question is, can we have something about the book from maybe an excerpt or what the book is all about? I don't think I heard anything about
It's
the
a
book.
compilation of her columns, which are extremely popular.
Okay.
They appear in the supplement which goes with the Times of India on Sundays. And if you're familiar with the paper and the supplement, then you will have read her already. This is a 3rd compilation of those columns.
Thank you. It's you know, it has these questions at the back, and these are like topics that I've dealt with in my columns. So it could be, do you believe in luck? Do you believe that there are some people who are lucky and others who are not? It could be, do you really believe that you will never kill? You know, that there's no bad element in you at all. Are you really, really honest? Do you really think you're a good person? And in relationships, it could be like, can you fall back in love again with the same person? And I say, yes, you can. Make yourself fall in love with someone. And there is things like, can relationships be mended once they are over? And how to maintain a good, loving relationship. So those are the kind of things.
Can you commit murder was the one I liked the most. There's time for just one more question. We'll take that one. The lady?
Yeah,
Prabha.
Thank you. She has the mic.
I thought it was me.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Congratulations, Vinita, on your book.
Thank you.
And you too, Shobha, on yours. I wanted to come back to the title of your book. Are you making the most out of life? And I think this question is to both of you. Apart from living outside your comfort zone, is there a habit or an attitude that you could define which really helps you to get more out of life? That's the question.
I'll answer it very briefly because there are people all indicating that we are out of time. I'm very attracted to risk. I am a natural born risk taker. I find risk extremely attractive. So that's the trigger for me. And I also like chaos a great deal. As a creative person, all the stimuli I get, it really comes from risks and chaos.
I believe that it's very important to discover your sense of purpose, the purpose of your life, to once you understand what it is, to focus on it, to believe, and what you believe in, to go ahead and do it. And if you go wrong, there is no, and never regret it, just redress it, rethink, reframe, and go back at it once again. I think that would make you really feel like you've lived life and you've made the most of it.
Thank you all very much for having been.
Thank
a
you.
super audience. Thank you so much. Thank you, Vinita. Thank you.
We wish to